The old year ended on a magical note as I discovered that there was snow on top of the mountain just up the road from me. And so I spent time reflecting on these past 12 months and what the future might entail. And as I came across this grove of evergreen, I was reminded of scripture in which God says his plans for us are higher than we can ever imagine. A great reminder as this new year begins. Another tradition that I have is to start the morning with a devotional. And this one was perfect from a book I found years ago called God Calling. And it says, dwell not on the past, only the present. Bury every fear of the future, of poverty for those dear to you, of suffering and of loss. Remember that you must not see as the world sees. I hold the year in my hands in trust for you. I shall guide you one day at a time. There's some New Year's traditions that I have placed all around the house, like lighting a bayberry candle. Bayberry candles were very precious in colonial times, as it took a lot of bayberries to make the candles, and thus they were expensive. As my Swiss smoker figurine smokes away, I'm reminded of another tradition that is particular to Appenzell in Switzerland, where my father comes from. Years ago, altar boys would fill barrels with smoking ashes scented with frankincense, and they would go all throughout the village, blessing the village for the coming year. Well, that tradition was brought into the house, where people would walk around with hot ashes and bless the house and then gather for a time of prayer. Another tradition is wassailing. Yes, wassail is a drink, but it also means good health. And there was something called orchard wassailing, in which they would tie toast dipped in cider to apple trees to bless them for the coming year. And this is where we get the saying, toast the new year. As 2024 starts, I cannot wait to see what God has planned for you and for me. And I will share with you another New Year's tradition that I began a few years ago. So, welcome to Old Stonewall Farm.
I'm not one for New Year's Eve celebrations. In fact, I can't remember the last time that I watched the ball drop in Times Square on TV. I'm usually in bed way before midnight. Today, as the new year begins, I go out into the woods because this is where I really find time to reflect, and I have the opportunity to allow that space for God to enter in and then start guiding me for the next 12 months to come. Now, sometimes New Year's can be a little anxious, can enter into the new year with a lot of trepidation because the unknown is scary. What will tomorrow bring? That's why I like to have a New Year celebration that focuses on God and his promises that no matter what, when we step into that unknown, God steps with us. There's a lot of traditions and superstitions that come with New Year's Eve celebrations, like the one that I shared with you from Appenzell, Switzerland, with the incense and then blessing the house and then having a time of prayer. Now, I happen to like that. It's way better than the other traditions and superstitions, like hanging toast from the tree to toast the trees. There's a lot of things that we do to try to ensure happiness and joy, prosperity for the coming months. And we try to do our best to make sure that this year we will have good luck. This year, everything will work out. And the thing that we need to do the most is just, I think, relax and be more in the moment, live each day fully present, and not worry so much about tomorrow because tomorrow hasn't happened. Why are we worrying about something that hasn't happened yet? Why do we worry about the what ifs? There is planning I am a planner. We need to plan. But there's also the abandonment of trusting completely. Today, I shared with my congregation, I'm also a pastor, about a service that John Wesley created in the early 1700s, well, mid 1700s, 1750, I think it was. And he got the idea for this service, though, from a Puritan preacher, writer from the 1600s. And it's a service of recommitting to the covenant. The covenant is the contract between God and God's children, a promise to be there for one another. So John Wesley in the 1750s created a service of the renewal of the covenant, which was to be held around January 1st to welcome in the new year. Because he thought, what better way of starting a new year than renewing our promise to God to just trust and to really depend on God, to not look for answers elsewhere, but this year to really keep our eyes on what really matters. And I shared that with my congregation because I thought it's such a great way to start a new year, to start it with prayer and to really step back and try not to worry so much, but just enter into each day that we have. I'm also out here in the woods because after church it was hard because I was reminded that each day we have is not a guarantee. I had a visit with a gentleman who is on hospice, making his way home to God. I entered his room and there he was in bed, and I took his hand and I was just talking to him and I began to pray. And at that moment, his eyes met mine. And I really can't explain what I saw in his eyes, but it wasn't fear. Here he was, saying goodbye to this life. And I didn't see fear in his eyes. What I saw was gratitude. What I saw was a peace, as if he was certain that this is okay. And he should be certain it is okay. But that look in his eyes, no fear, leaving this world, but just a peace. I will carry that with me for a long time. He reminded me as I enter into the new year to enter into each day with that peace and no fear. Recommit to the covenant again. Recommit to loving God. Recommit to being kind to other people. Recommit to not worrying about tomorrow. Recommit to entering into the unknown future unafraid. God is making all things new, not just a new year, but all things new. If we only allow God to really shape us and mold us and guide us. I want to share with you a New Year's tradition that I began a few years ago. Now, as I said, I'm not much of a New Year's Eve partier. If anything, I like getting up really early on the first day of the new year, going for a run. So a few years ago, I got up really early and I started to make my breakfast, and the candle was on the table. And I decided to light it. And as I looked at the flame flickering, I thought, how great it is to be reminded when I go out into that day, I will remember that God's light is shining on my path, no matter what the day will bring. I did that for New Year's Day breakfast many years ago. And then I started doing it the next morning and the morning after and the morning after that, to the point where having a candle-lit breakfast is now an everyday occurrence for me. I encourage you as well to embrace a new tradition of having a candle-lit breakfast as a reminder to start your day knowing that God's light is shining on you. So, light your candles, have your candlelit breakfast, and step into the unknown future of the new year, unafraid. And if by chance you did fall asleep on December 31st and you missed the ball dropping in Times Square on your TV screen, I have some good news for you. You have another opportunity to celebrate the new year. What am I talking about? In my research of early colonial American history, I discovered that early on, there were some colonists who did not celebrate the new year on January 1st. Rather, the new year was March 25th, which is the Annunciation Day, the day the angel announces to Mary that she's going to have God's child. I came across this account in the Plymouth Plantation records that the governor wrote something about March 25th being a new year. And that got me curious, so I did more research, and it turns out that for a long time, up to maybe the mid-1700s, when everyone finally got together on the same page that New Year's is January 1st, but up until that time period, there were some groups of people that celebrated the new year on March 25th and some on January 1st. It has something to do with the calendar. The Julian calendar, which was named after Julius Caesar, had one date for the new year. And then the Gregorian calendar, which was named after Pope Gregory from the 1500s, had another date for the new year. Eventually, we all got on the same page, and New Year's Eve was December 31st, and the new year was January 1st. And of course, many ways to welcome the new year in. But I offer you from Old Stonewall Farm an opportunity to welcome the new year with your eyes on Christ and with a new tradition of having a candlelit breakfast. No matter what happens, remember, all is indeed well. God bless and Happy New Year.